Millions of workers like Danielle Maston are getting a pay rise.
I'm averaging about 30 hours a fortnight because I'm studying full time as well. So overall, money-wise, it's a good thing to be getting paid a little bit extra.
This year, the Fair Work Commission is raising the minimum wage and awards like those covering cleaners by 3.75%.
Pays for petrol, pays for any other living expenses. It's better to have more than nothing, but it's still not really good enough in my eyes.
From July, the minimum hourly rate will rise from $23.23 to just over $24, or about $33 extra a week to almost $916 for full-time workers. About 2.6 million people are covered by minimum and award payments.
They mostly work part-time hours, are predominantly women, and almost half are casual employees. They are also much more likely to be low paid. Modern award minimum wages remain in real terms lower than they were 5 years ago.
Unions are disappointed the Commission isn't boosting wages by more, but they say that low-paid workers will also benefit from the Stage 3 tax cuts.
A mid-level community worker will be $3,200 a year better off. An entry-level retail or hospo worker will be $2,600 a year better off.
The retail and hospitality sectors are battling rising insolvencies, and industry groups say the Fair Work Commission's decision goes too far.
Our first perspective on this is that it tests the acceptable limit for business, particularly for small business. We are in a situation where we still have significant or material ongoing inflationary pressures in the economy.
But economists say Fair Work got it right.
This outcome does not give us a higher inflation track than we already had. We continue to see inflation coming down through the second half of this year. We continue to see the RBA on hold through this year with the first rate cut in 2025.
Danielle's boss says they won't be raising their prices to deal with the higher wages.
It's difficult for us to pass those costs on to our customers because they're also feeling the pinch. So we have to maybe absorb those costs and maybe look at kind of increasing our prices later in the year, maybe even next year.
Unions were pushing for an extra increase to the awards that cover female-dominated industries like early childhood educators and dental assistants, but the Fair Work Commission has held back and instead has announced a review.
The Commission have now set down a process with timelines, prioritised the most feminised awards, and we will see a shift.
We believe that these workers have waited long enough for a pay increase.
Danielle says she would welcome a review of the cleaning award as well.
It always seems to be jobs that are sort of more manual labour that seem to be overlooked.
A push for fairer work.
The Reserve Bank Board will be breathing a little easier after the Fair Work decision, according to a former Assistant Governor of the bank. Lucy Ellis is now the Chief Economist of Westpac and joined me earlier. Welcome to The Business. If you were a fly on the wall of the RBA, what reaction would you have likely heard when the decision was handed down?
I can't help thinking that inside the RBA there was some measure of relief. This was slightly lower wage case decision than a lot of people had been expecting. We had penciled in something higher underlying our own forecasts, and we think this makes the Reserve Bank a lot more confident that domestic inflation won't get out of hand.
Given the pressure lower income households are facing, could the wage increase have been higher and remain consistent with the bank's inflation target?
The Fair Work Commission noted that they were also taking into account that everybody is getting a tax cut and that will provide a fair degree of cost of living relief. They talked about the various cost of living measures that the government put in the budget, and they were also mindful of the superannuation guarantee. So taking all those things together, I think they were trying to balance the need to get inflation under control with the needs of the low-paid workers who are overwhelmingly the ones covered by this decision.
The Fair Work Commission also acknowledged the less positive outlook for some sectors of the economy. Do you expect the decision will make conditions more difficult for some businesses which have been struggling?
I think a wage increase in line with inflation over the year to the March quarter is something most businesses should be able to manage. We have seen that many businesses have been able to pass on their higher costs, but we are also very aware that the sectors that have been struggling the most, where households have pulled back their expenditure and where inflation is actually already back in the band, is those discretionary categories like entertainment and hospitality, like certain parts of retail, where people have really had to pull back their spending given the cost of living pressures that they're under.
Where do you expect wages growth to be come the end of the calendar year, and will it have caught up with inflation over the pandemic?
Well, inflation is coming down quite quickly. We expect that by the time we get to the end of the year, the various measures of wages growth will actually be outstripping the rate of inflation that we see over calendar 2024.
Lucy, have you finalised the Westpac GDP forecast ahead of Wednesday's read, and what are you expecting?
We're expecting very soft growth. In the quarter, our current read is about 0.3, but as you know, you always get some additional information in the days leading up to that. I think the message to focus on is just how weak domestic demand is. So there can be some noise around trade and inventories, but we think domestic demand growth will once again be 0.1% as it was last quarter. This is a very weak result, and it is being driven by that very soft consumer outlook.
Is it getting more difficult to walk the narrow path to a soft landing?
It's never been an easy decision, but as the Deputy Governor said in an interview over the weekend, this is something that they're trying to balance. They're trying to balance getting inflation back to target with not losing those gains that we've managed to have on the labour market. Unemployment is still well lower than it's been for almost all of the last 40 years, and that's something they have been asked to hold on to.
Would the RBA cut if growth goes negative, or would it wait for inflation to moderate further?
The RBA is really focused on getting inflation back to target. I think if we do see an even more negative, or an even weaker number than we're expecting in the national accounts this week, I think that will tilt their hand towards being readier to cut rates sooner. But we don't think that's imminent. We expect rates will first start declining in November.
The Reserve Bank Board will meet in June. What do you expect it will do at that meeting, and what will its key messages be?
Well, their key messages will be as they have been for the last few months. They're not going to rule anything in or out. They've learned the lessons about making sure that they're not promising what they can't deliver. They're not going to be giving too much forward guidance. They're going to be very mindful about keeping inflation on that track down towards the target and hopefully being back in target next year. And they're going to be very mindful also that growth is weak. So they'll be trying to balance those considerations in the messaging as well as in their decision.
Lucy Ellis, great to speak to you.
Thanks very much.